All right, everyone, welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Network, presented by our wonderful friends over at Game Time and Factor Meals. It is Brian Hines back, as always, with Alex Barth, because the Patriots' second preseason game is in the books. They dropped it 14-13 to the Philadelphia Eagles Thursday night, and although it was a late loss, Maye was a little upset. His first loss as a head coach. There was some encouraging stuff to take away and talk about. So we'll get right into it. And Alex, I thought long and hard about how to start this show with either Drake Maye or Bryce Behringer's opening punts, which was an absolute dime in the coffin corner. But we'll tease the good stuff and we'll talk about Drake Maye and the New England Patriots quarterback room to open it, because Jacoby Brissett started. He got the first quarter, which was 3 series, and then they turned it over to Drake Maye. He got the second and third quarter, which ended up being 4 series of work. So we finally got game action, live Drake Maye. First 2 series, even with most of the starting offensive line, they just swapped out Nick Leverett for David Andrews. So we got some protection, and there were some promising, encouraging signs from Drake Maye. It wasn't all perfect. I'm not taking my victory lap, even though I want to, but it was a pretty encouraging kind of a preseason debut, because we just saw him for 6 plays last week, but there was some encouraging stuff from Drake Maye last night.
Well, you're not taking the victory lap, going back a couple weeks to a crossover we did. That's why you're Drake Maye fan number 2 and Evan Lazar is Drake Maye fan number 1. I don't know if you saw the interaction between Evan and Drake in the locker room last night, but Evan was ecstatic when Drake Maye walked by him. Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was encouraging. I saw a lot of what I wanted to see. And I mean, let's call that what it is. His first real extended NFL game experience. Last week, 7 snaps, mostly runs, really only threw down the field once. When we talked about this at the time, there was really nothing there in terms of what we could learn. In this game, he was out there. He was running the full offense. There was one point where they got backed up, and I think it was an incomplete pass. It actually might have been the deep ball that Javon Baker dropped, which we'll get to. That they were in like 3rd, and he had taken a big hit on 2nd down. They're in 3rd and long, and it's like, all right, here comes, shotgun draw, whatever, move on. Don't get him hit. And they go 5 wide, and he threw the ball down the field. So they gave him plenty of chances. I thought he looked loose. I mean that in a good way. Like, I just thought he looked comfortable. He looked relaxed. He looked like he was out there having fun, just slinging the ball. He kind of talked about it after the game. He was allowed to do some of the stuff with his legs that maybe he wasn't able to do as much in practice. You saw his ability to create through pressure. You saw his ability to create out of structure. Made some good in structure throws too. Like you said, it wasn't perfect. Sailed a couple of throws. Kayshon Boutte beat him out once. Kayshon Boutte bailed him out once, and then another one of Javon Baker maybe could have been picked. Did have a fumbled snap, and look, anytime you have a fumbled snap, it's on both players. But going back and rewatching that play, it felt like more of a Drake Maye issue than a Nick Leverett issue. So it wasn't all perfect, but you saw a lot of why people are so excited about him, and why, and I'm not in this group, but why a lot of people want him to start week 1. There's real high level upside there. And he was able to show it off a little bit. Now, again, it's against the Eagles' second defense. It's just one game, but I think you have to come away from that feeling very happy about what you saw. And the idea that he's like 2 years away. I mean, come on, what are we doing here?
He's going to start this year. Like,
yeah,
at some point, whether it's week 1, maybe that's rushing ahead of ourselves. But yeah, I think the big thing was just that the fact that he was able to run around out there and play kind of off script, off structure, which, we mentioned a few times now. We've done like 3 shows since he's last spoken on Friday or Tuesday, whatever the days are at this point. But where he's like, once I can get out of the red jersey and move around a little bit, things could be a little bit different out there. And you saw it was just kind of night and day, where he's still playing in structure at start, but then once it breaks down, then he can get out of the pocket. He can move around. There was that 3rd and 10 to Baker. Like, it was a 3rd and 10 because he picks up like 5 yards on just a keeper before that. Or there was one after the Vidarian Lowe, his first drive after the Vidarian Lowe false start, it's 2nd and 11. He kind of runs around and he picks up a couple yards. I believe that was on that instance. And then, it's a manageable 3rd down and they convert it. So he was able to make plays with his legs. obviously the touchdown then, right? They were calling some of the stuff it seemed like he was comfortable with at North Carolina. So it wasn't a surprise that he looked like Drake Maye. They let Drake Maye do Drake Maye stuff, and he looked like Drake Maye, the number 3 overall pick, and who tore it up at North
Yeah.
Carolina there. So, yeah, there was some things to work on still. You mentioned a couple misses in the flat, the one down the left sideline to Baker. Like, Drake Maye loves to give his guys chances when he sees it one-on-one, but Mitchell Wilcox was open, like kind of underneath on a crosser. Maybe they look at that and say, okay, let's take the profit there instead of trying to get the shot. But I thought like the footwork looked really good, the fundamentals, even though he wasn't under center as much. I think he only took like 5 or 6 snaps under center. So yeah, they let him get in the gun, even a lot of empty, which is kind of for a young quarterback, and they let him run and do a lot of stuff that he did at North Carolina. So I thought, yeah, you walked away from that. Again, maybe not starting week 1, but it was very promising and encouraging. And you assume the people who are saying he's got to sit this whole year, hopefully they kind of come back and say like, okay, he could start at some point this season. We'll just kind of see when that is.
Yeah, it's all about closing the gap. We've talked about this, and it's probably too little, too late at this point for week 1 because there's 5 practices left. The week before the Bengals game doesn't count. That's game prep, and can he do enough? It's not just about being better than Jacoby Brissett, and we'll get to Jacoby Brissett. He's kind of come back to Drake Maye too. He's part of the reason this gap is closer. But you guys know how I feel about this. Once you put him in, he's in. And saying Drake Maye's the week 1 starter is more than just saying he should start week 1. If you're saying Drake Maye's the week 1 starter, you're saying you're comfortable with him for all 17 games, that you do not worry about him getting through a 17-game season. So can Drake Maye show enough in these next 5, 6 practices, whatever it is, in the game against Washington, that you're perfectly comfortable with him for a full season? I just don't think there's enough time there to prove that. But he's certainly closed the gap.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone knows I've been like a week 1 truther. I think he's always been able to start week 1, but I think realistically, maybe now you're looking at the back-to-back home games, week 5, week 6, Miami and Houston. Then you shorten his season too, so now like theoretically he's playing a college season, right? Like he only has 12, 13 games. You don't have to overextend him to 16, 17 games, where we saw how that worked. With Mac, right? Like they fell off after that late bye, which they have again this year. And, that's pretty common even outside of Mac. Rookies kind of hit the wall. So maybe avoid a late season slump if you give them the first month, and then let Jacoby take the first month, and maybe you iron out some of those offensive line things that we'll talk about, I'm sure. So, but Gerard Mayo was asked this morning, is Drake Maye going to get at least some starting reps at practice? Which I think we all want to at least see some of that as well, because he still hasn't taken 1 starting rep at practice during training camp. They're back out there tomorrow. He said, Mayo said they'll have a coaching meeting today to kind of figure that out, see what path they want to go. Are you expecting to get out there tomorrow and see Drake take any reps with David Andrews in that starting offense, or do you think it's all just going to be Jacoby still here?
I mean, I would hope so. This is what we talked about him. And this was going into the first preseason game, which obviously the timeline shifted, but could he go out there and prove to the coaching staff that he deserves and earn those reps with the starters? I think he's done that. I wouldn't give them all to him because I still think you got to get Jacoby Brissett ready for the regular season, but I'd be a little disappointed if this week we don't see Drake Maye more with the ones. Look, what they did in 2021 was Cam Newton would rep first with the ones, but then Mac Jones would come in and he would get more reps than Newton did with the ones. And I think a setup like this, at least for the week, makes sense. The next week, when it's time to get ready for Cincinnati, you rebalance it again. But I think Maye's earned the chance. I think Maye's earned the chance to rep more with the ones. Gerard Mayo said this morning, it's still a competition. All right, let's see a quarterback competition then. Turn it like it hasn't looked like one in practice. And I get he's saying like everybody's competing, but is it a competition in the sense that everybody's out here competing, or is it a competition in the sense that you're really going to let these guys go head to head and see who's better? Because it's certainly been the first. Of course, it's been the first. We haven't seen that second thing yet. This would be the time. I mean, it's now or never if you're going to do that.
Yep. But speaking of Jacoby, they got the first 3 series of work, finished 3 of 7, 17 yards in the interception in the end zone. I think early in camp we were talking about the gap widening because Jacoby was playing so well, right, between him and Drake Maye. But now it seems to be coming the other way, maybe because Jacoby hasn't been playing so well. The accuracy continues to kind of be sporadic. He had a miss deep to Jalen Polk. He had a miss short to Pop, even though, he slipped at the top of his route. And then the interception was a miscommunication with him and Austin Hooper. And, if he wants this job, like, he can't be turning the ball over, right? Like, he's got to be the steady veteran in there, take care of the football. And that's, Brissett's pass. He doesn't really throw a lot of interceptions, but you've seen it in camp. Like, he had 2, I think, in the joint practice and then 1 in the game last night. So where are you kind of at with Jacoby Brissett right now? Because it feels like he started camp pretty well and he's kind of coming back the other way at this point.
Yeah, it was a rough week, and you got to take the full camp picture for what it is. But the accuracy issues are starting to get in the way of the other progress he's made. And I think on the play with Austin Hooper, that was a matter of frustration. Like, he didn't want to leave the field with a field goal. Now, I'd throw it away, and as a veteran, see if you can convince Gerard Maye to let you go for it there. 4th and 3 from the, 8-yard line, something like that. Like, that's not an unrealistic spot to go. But it was a rough week. It was a rough week, and he was spraying the ball. And if it looks like this, it could get tough on offense, because at the one thing you could say about Jacoby Brissett throughout the summer, and maybe I was higher on him than most, but the one thing I think you could say definitively, he was giving guys a chance to make plays. He was creating opportunities for the offense, whether those opportunities were seized or not. It was, situation, but he was creating opportunities for the offense. He didn't do that over last week, both in that game and the joint practice, and even going back to Monday. There were plays that were just not competitive. And that's the one thing about Jacoby Brissett you're looking for. Like, he's going to give you a chance to make plays. He's not going to make the stupid plays. He's not going to make the overwhelming negative plays. And we've started to see some of those creep in here the last few weeks.
Yep. That's the thing. Like, if him and Drake are both going to be a little sporadic, right? Like, you saw Drake had the 2 inaccurate ones in the flat. So if they're both going to be sporadic like that, like, that still leans me to the rookie, because just the upside is higher with Maye, and he can run around and make those plays with his legs. So yeah, you'd like to see Jacoby kind of take care of the football a little bit better. And like you said, let those guys make plays. So
right.
Yeah, we'll see Saturday, Sunday, Monday too, right? They're practicing Monday.
Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Okay, so tons of practice time here before their last preseason game down there in Washington. So we'll keep an eye out on those 2, obviously, to see how the reps and how the performance look over this next week. But behind them, or anything, you didn't have anything else on the top 2, right?
I think that's pretty much it.
All right. So behind them, Joe Milton was 3rd up yesterday. Got 2-3 series of work after Maye, and then Bailey Zappi came in for the last 2-minute drill. Wasn't as flashy for Joe Milton this time, as we're now in the full Joe Milton experience, but
yeah,
you still saw the arm strength. Like, he had the one, it was the complete breakdown, and he's rolling out to his right and just flicks it 40 yards. So I don't know. We're just completely in the Joe Milton experience right now.
Yeah, I mean, that was I joked last night on Twitter. Next time somebody asks me to explain Joe Milton, I'm just going to show them that play.
Yeah,
goes the wrong way on the play action, gets out in open space with 2 defenders, is able to run by them, completely off balance, throws the ball 40 yards on a rope, hits the wide receiver right in the hands, but is a little bit of a leading ball into a defender. Wide receiver gets hit, can't make the catch. That's Joe Milton right there. They're the good and the bad and all of it. You ride the roller coaster, and I still think he's worth keeping on the roster. He is a project player. You see what you have. He's an interesting project. He's a fun project. That doesn't mean he's coming for the starting job anytime soon. I went on this rant. I don't know if I did it on this show. I did it on another show, that back in 2021 or in 2022, it would have been the fall of 21. I was telling people, hey, there's this guy at Western Kentucky that's setting all these records. He's kind of a good fit for what Josh McDaniels likes. They should draft him as a backup quarterback to Mac Jones. And everybody was like, you're crazy. Shut up. They have a quarterback. They don't need to draft a quarterback. They drafted Bailey Zappi. And I was like, hey, they have a good backup. Like, yes, this is good. This is a good thing. Then Zappi fever. And I became like the Zappi guy. Like, Zappi became my guy.
You had the fever.
And well, then Zappi fever happened, and I tell everybody, and everybody's like, you must be thrilled. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm happy for him, but I still just think he's a backup quarterback. I still think that's what he is. And then suddenly I had to become like this anti-Zappe guy because I was telling people he wasn't the second coming of Tom Brady. I just wanted to enjoy Bailey Zappe being the backup quarterback for the Patriots, and it didn't happen. I don't want to have to do that again with Joe Milton. I really don't. I think last night was painted a really good picture of who Joe Milton is. There's definitely intriguing traits to keep him around. Maybe he becomes a starter in the league down the road, either in New England or elsewhere. At the very least, he becomes a positive trade piece for you. But he's not he shouldn't be in the mix for the starting quarterback job this year. He's still too far away. And I think you saw both sides of that last night. I think that was a good, it kind of helped people really understand what we're working with, because we talked about this last week. The people who don't watch college football maybe don't understand he's a tougher player to evaluate, Joe Milton, than the average quarterback. And I think you needed last night as a bit of a cold shower to understand the full makeup of what he is.
Yep, exactly. That's the Joe Milton experience. But
yeah,
you mentioned Bailey Zappe. I would have liked to see Joe Milton get that 2-minute drill at the end.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't need to see Bailey Zappe do that. Let Joe Milton sling it, please.
Yeah, that felt weird that they let Bailey Zappe do that. I don't know if they're trying to showcase him or something, but like if a team really wanted Bailey Zappe, he's got like 7-8 starts of regular season game film out there. Like, why would they care about his preseason game film? Like, I'm sure they would look at it, but they're going to put more weight into the regular season film that he already has out there. So I don't get what they're really doing with Bailey Zappe here, but because he got the 2-minute drill, I would have loved to see that to Joe Milton. But I did see your roster projection on 985thesportshub.com, and you had Bailey Zappe on it, I believe. So
I had all 4 quarterbacks. I still think they're going to need the buffer quarterback. I didn't want to overdo it with the veteran TBD that I do on my roster projections. So it's Zappe for now. But I think there is going to be a buffer quarterback, and maybe it is Zappe. The fact that they let him play last night to me was I don't know, you want to call it a sign of respect. Like, they didn't want him to be the only quarterback that didn't play. That last drive doesn't mean that last drive doesn't, it's a 2-minute drive, right? It's the very end of the game. That just seemed like we want you to play because we want you to play sort of thing. We don't want it to be, well, look, Bailey Zappe didn't play. That's why I think they put him out there. So that shows me they still have some level of respect for him, and maybe they keep him around as the buffer quarterback.
So by buffer, do you mean like Jacoby Brissett gets hurt early and they don't want Drake Maye to play, or behind Drake Maye? Okay.
Yeah, and that wouldn't even necessarily mean within the game. If Jacoby Brissett gets hurt like late in the fourth quarter, you want to throw Drake Maye out there. I mean, if it's high ankle sprain 4 weeks in like week 2, and you don't want, now it's Drake Maye on a short week and then going out to San Francisco, let's let Zappe start these 2. He started games in the league before. It's a tough couple of weeks, and then we'll go to Maye later, or Jacoby will come back or whatever. Once Drake Maye goes in, you don't need the buffer quarterback anymore. Jacoby Brissett's your backup. Unless he gets hurt, then I guess you still need a third guy. But at that point, I just might go with Joe Milton. Because I just don't, that the optics of Joe Milton being the first rookie quarterback to start for the Patriots this year would not be great.
Yeah, that'd probably be tough.
If he's backing up Drake Maye once Drake Maye's the starter, I'm actually very okay with that. But if Jacoby gets hurt and you don't want to put Drake Maye in yet, I do think you need a buffer. And if there's still something about Zappe that they want to keep him around, like they have this, find 52 other guys that are locks. Now, look, I had Zappe as the 51st player. I had him right on the boundary, but they have the kind of roster right now where you can keep 4 quarterbacks. It's not that many guys at other positions that you're clamoring to keep on the roster, right? Yep. It's, what it came down to, honestly, one of the switches I made, Armand Watts, and maybe we'll get to him later, didn't play most of that game, only played late. Free agency signing, thought he was going to make it, but when you have guys like Jeremiah Farms playing the way he is, when you have guys like Tristan Hill playing the way he is, Armand Watts, what has he done in this camp? Like, he really hasn't been around. Are you going to keep an extra defensive tackle who's probably not really going to play, or are you going to keep a 4th quarterback? You might go 4th quarterback there. And I know people will say, well, you can get Zappe on the practice squad, and maybe that's ultimately what they end up doing, and he serves that buffer role from the practice squad. I wouldn't rule that out either, but I don't know. I feel like that 4th quarterback, that buffer quarterback, is an important role, and maybe at least to start, that guy ends up on the roster. And that's the other thing. Once Maye takes over, Now you don't need the buffer quarterback. That's not necessarily a 17-game roster
Yep.
spot.
Yep. But you could probably get one of those defensive tackles on the practice squad too, right? And just
Right,
keep
yeah.
Bailey's, because I still think if they waive Bailey Zappi, like I find it hard to believe he'd come back again on the practice squad with how they've remodeled their quarterback room. Like, because he came back last year because he thought he could beat out Mac Jones, and he was right by thinking that. But the way this
That's
room
true.
is set up, it might be tougher to kind of convince him to come back on the practice squad. So maybe you keep him, don't give him that chance, and then you can, Sam Roberts comes back on the practice squad, or Mike Purcell, or one of
Right.
those guys. So we'll see how that shakes out. But that was 20 plus minutes on the quarterbacks. Again, Brissett kind of falling back to earth. Really encouraging stuff from Drake Maye and his 4 series of work. So again, practice tomorrow. We'll see how the reps look, if there's any change in that at all. Gerard Mayo said the competition's still open, so we'll see how that looks. But let's take a very quick break, and we'll hear from our friends over at Game Time. I got to talk to you guys about Game Time, which is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and it makes getting tickets faster and easier because prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying all your MLB tickets. They have flash deals to save even more, with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event, and zone deals to save if you're looking to sit in a specific section. It is baseball season, and the Red Sox are hot, and while they're going on the road for the next week, they'll be back in Fenway against the Yankees, where you can see All-Star Game MVP Jarren Duran as the Red Sox continue to make their playoff push. And if you're in the Boston area, if you're around Fenway, Cask and Flagon, Bleacher Bar, getting a bite to eat, getting a drink, Game Time has last-minute deals where you can save up to 60% off on buying last-minute tickets for sports. So make sure you check the Game Time app right before first pitch to make sure you're not missing any last-minute deals. And you can even get your comedy, theater, or concert tickets on Game Time as well. So take the guesswork out of buying all your MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, let's talk offensive line, because the deadline from Gerard Mayo set is now, apparently, right? Remember earlier this offseason, he said they will hope to have their starting 5 up front after the second preseason game. I don't know if we're at 5. Elliot Wolf was on the broadcast last night and said we're kind of still working through that. So we'll see. That's something else that's going to be big at practice tomorrow. But I would be surprised if they go away from the Vidarian Lowe, City So, David Andrews, Mike Onwenu, Chooks Okorafor lineup that they had out there again last night for a good amount of time, honestly. David Andrews came out early, but, Vidarian Lowe and City So played a while. Chooks Okorafor got some good run. And then, the Nick Leverett and the backups came in. But that starting unit, what'd you think of them? PFF seemed to like them, and I know PFF can be shaky, but they only have them giving up 2 total pressures totals. But what'd you think of that starting lineup last night?
I thought most of it was good. Chooks Okorafor got beat once on a run, but besides that, I thought he had a good game. So Onwenu had a good game. I don't know what more we need to see from Vidarian Lowe at this point. He got beat again, got beat clean a couple of times. They got to try something else. We talked about some of the last show. You just said it may not be until after week 1. But I thought Caden Wallace, he wasn't spectacular, but he was fine. Just like with Drake Maye, he deserves a longer look. He deserves a look with the ones. I think at this point, that's worth a shot.
Yep. I will say, I thought watching it back, Lowe was fine, which he gave up the sack. It was a long play though. Obviously the chip was weird, but I thought he was fine. But still, I would like to see. I agree with you. I think he's best as a number 3 tackle who's a spot starter and doesn't have to start at left tackle every week. I would still like to see Caden Wallace rep with that top unit, just like Drake Maye, as you said. Let him get in there and see how it looks. So I thought it was fine. It wasn't ideal. He had the false start too in there, the only penalty of the day. But yeah, I would still like to see how that looks with Caden Wallace. Get the young guys in there and see how they look. But Layden Robinson was also pretty impressive again. So
He
do you
had a good
think
game.
at some point Mike Onwenu is going to get kicked back out? Now maybe we're talking like week 6, week 7, like last year. But do you think he could put the pressure on him? On the coaches with the way Lowe is playing to maybe kick Chooks back over and bump Big Mike outside, even though I know we all think Mike Onwenu is best at guard, but he's a good tackle, and you might need a good tackle if Layden Robinson can give you a good guard play right now as well.
Well, it depends what they think of Chooks Okorafor at left tackle. I wouldn't force the issue at left tackle to get Layden Robinson in the lineup, but if they think, let me put it this way, I'd rather. Who's the better left tackle, Caden Wallace or Chooks Okorafor? Answer that question first. If you're going to get better play at left tackle and it means Layden Robinson stays on the bench, I think you keep Layden Robinson on the bench. Unless you're just going to bench Chooks Okorafor and put Mike at right and Layden at right guard. But I think you got to prioritize left tackle, do what's best for that position first, and then go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that's why I would love to see Caden Wallace at left tackle with that starting group, which is why that's frustrating. But yeah, I would still be surprised if that changed though, because they've ran this 5 with Vidarian Lowe at the left side for like plus over 2 weeks now. So I would be surprised if we get a change there. But again, something we'll look out for at practice tomorrow. But the fall off, as Gerard Mayo said, it's a dramatic fall off between the first unit and the second and third unit. Those backup units were rough outside. We had that like semi backup unit where it was like Vidarian Lowe, City So, Nick Leverett, Layden Robinson, and Caden Wallace. That one was fine. But then that third unit is rough. And we've talked a lot about how the depth on the offensive line is just as big as a question as the starters. I mean, they can't snap the ball, right? Like they don't have a reliable center really behind David Andrews. Nick Leverett's been fine, but even he had the low snap with Drake Maye. And then, Liam Fornadell is snapping and he dirts one to Bailey Zappi that ends the game. I still don't know why we just can't have Charles Turner back there, like the actual center who played center at LSU for 25 games. Like, I guess we're too good for that. But yeah, Gerard Mayo, like his comments after the game were kind of like made you go, whoa, like that. He said there's such a dramatic drop off between the first unit and the backup pairs.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear. We've seen that. And I've said this, as much as we talk about the issues with starters, there's no depth in that unit either. They just have a lot they need to work on. And that's not going to necessarily change this year. We'll see what they do during roster cuts, if they add some players that maybe help them on the margins in terms of depth. But it's more than just who's the starting left tackle.
So do you think part of his answer, I was just trying to pull it up, he made it sound like it was a lot of mental beyond physical. Do you think that might be a reason we're not seeing Caden Wallace at left tackle right now? If
I would imagine
behind doors, it's more of the mental stuff.
And I said this the other day. People ask why he's not getting more run when Layden Robinson's not getting more run. I think that's just rookie. They're hesitant with where the rookies are at right now.
Yep. So his exact quote was, I would say there's a dramatic drop off, not really physically, but just knowing what to do between the first line and the second and third guys. So maybe that has some of the reason you're not seeing Caden Wallace at left tackle for, excuse me, like a veteran like Vidarian Lowe. So I don't know, anyone stand out elsewhere on the offensive line or anything else on that offensive line from last night?
I think that's pretty much it. It's the left tackle and the bad snaps are the big story.
The snaps are just killing me. I think we get offensive coaches this week, assistant coaches sometime this week. So
yeah,
maybe we can finally ask Scott Peters or someone like, why won't Charles Turner just snap the ball? Because it's crazy how many plays in practice and in games they're losing the game on a bad snap. Like you saw someone, David Andrews meme, he had the same facial impression on the sideline all night. Like it's been a mess at that backup center spot. So hopefully they can figure something out there. But wide receivers, let's start with the rookies. Kind of a tale of two nights for Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. We could start positively, I guess, with Jalen Polk. Like,
Yeah.
only 2 catches for 6 yards, but showed some wiggle. I thought he ran some better routes. He got open on one of the deep ones. It looked like he had a step that Jacoby kind of missed him. I was going to say something else too, but I just lost it on Jalen Polk.
No,
But
I think you like what you saw from him. He had that catch in the flat, and he was able to pick up a few yards. He also beat his guy deep and would have had a deep touchdown. Jacoby Brissett didn't overthrow him. So multifaceted game for him. I thought he was maybe their most encouraging receiver last night.
yep, just speaking of rookies getting first team reps,
Yeah.
he should be out there as well. Like I
And
would.
he seems the closest as anybody. He's been getting
That's
on the field first of all the
that's
rookies.
true. He got on the field, or I think he was out there with Brissett for a
Yes.
series last night. So he seems like he's working his way into that. But yeah, they opened with like the Osborne, and then it was Rager or Taekwon, and then Pop would come on for 11 personnel. Like I would rather see Jalen Polk in there over like a KJ Osborne or one of the other two in that starting group. He should have the most snaps at receiver if it was up to me by the end of the year. I would love to see that. Just play him a ton, and I think he could. He deserves it, and I think he could keep up with that. But on the other end of the spectrum, it was Javon Baker. Not a great night. He obviously had the drop on the beautiful pass from Drake Maye down the field. Earlier in the game, he got kind of bullied along the boundary against press, and he ran out of bounds, and he couldn't bring in another pass from Drake Maye. So he did draw a pass interference later, but you're kind of seeing the hit and miss of Javon Baker. That's part of his game, and lately it's been more of the miss, especially last night.
Yeah, that was a tough one for him because he is going to be this boomer bust player, and his value is in spectacular catches and deep balls. And the one he like that, it's a bit of a dive, it's a bit out in front, but he's got to catch that. That's kind of his play. The deep one from Drake Maye. He also had going up the sideline. Drake Maye gave him a throw. It wasn't perfect, but he certainly gave him a chance to make a play on it. But he allowed Keely Ringo to run him out of bounds on the route. So he now can't make a play on the ball because it's a penalty. If he does, it's just attention to detail. He's got to be better there. He's never going to be a week in, week out guy. He's going to be like Gabe Davis. Like if he works out, he'll be like Gabe Davis where, 4 or 5 games a year, he looks like a top 10 receiver in football. And then you don't see him again for the other, whatever it is, 12 or 13 games. So he's got to make the most of the opportunities when they come because they're going to be a little more few and far between than for other receivers. 2 opportunities last night he had let slip. That's not great for him.
I wonder if this would be a off-season thing next year, but I wonder if they would like him to bulk up a little, like add 5 to 10 pounds. Because me and Taylor have talked about this a lot. Like he's a lot smaller than I envisioned him when he got here, and Taylor said after watching him get bullied along the boundary last night, which he's had troubles in the past, even against press. Like Taylor was saying, okay, maybe he has to be like more of a Z receiver than a pure X receiver. So I wonder if that's something where, again, you can't add 10 pounds right now, but next offseason, if they try to bulk him up a little bit so he can kind of last more on the boundary. But yeah, he is a hit or miss guy, boomer bust. So you hope it's as he keeps going, you get more of those booms and it's 50-50. But yeah, it was mostly misses for him last night, I would say. But
yeah.
Any other receivers stand out? I mean, Kayshon Boutte had, the nice one-handed catch. He had the late one from Zappy. He seems to be making some momentum. I think Gerard Mayo even said last night, like he's been playing well. So anything from him or anything else in that receiver room that caught your eye?
Yeah, I think he's continued to build momentum. I don't know. Did I miss anything or was Tyquan Thornton kind of a no-show last night?
Yeah, let me check his snap count.
He's I don't think he played a ton, but even when he played, I didn't notice a ton of them.
Yeah.
I just
he played 9 snaps. So
we really, since he suffered that injury, he's kind of just been out of the picture. And that's exactly what we all feared. I have him on the outside looking in right now. I do. I just don't think you've seen enough from him.
He had the one nice go ball that Jacoby underthrew last week.
Right.
But yeah, he hasn't been doing much since the injury. Was he limited in the joint practice still? I think
He might have been. He definitely wasn't fully limited because I think he did a couple snaps in team, but yeah, I don't think he was 100%.
Yeah, he didn't finish with a catch last night either. So quiet night and 9 snaps for Taekwon. Yeah. We saw a little pop. Too much a pop for my liking. We didn't need him returning.
Yeah, seriously.
Last night in the preseason, but
I don't need to see him again. He doesn't need to play in Washington. I'm good.
Yeah, so good to see like he's healthy and he's out there. But like, okay, we'll see Pop Douglas week 1. And I think that was pretty much it for that wide receiver room. So, or we could say tight ends. No Hunter Henry. Austin Hooper was the target on the interception. Didn't play much after that, but still, did you have TBD for your third tight end spot? Because like they're not getting much out of any of those guys. It was quiet for Mitchell Wilcox. Jaheim Bell had a few rough snaps that were going around Twitter in the run game, and he hasn't made much of an impact as a pass catcher. So that third tight end spot still really looks wide open right now.
Yeah, I still think that's an external addition. Yeah, just nothing. Wilcox, Bell, Petto had a bad drop last night, I think, right? Nobody's really done much to grab that job yet. He did something that I looked at it. It was a drop or maybe missed a block or it's in my notes somewhere, but he did something that I looked at and I was like, that's not, tough. Yeah, that's a tough spot for you.
Yep.
One more thing on the receiver side, just reminded me, just going back. Sucks to see Jaquay Jackson get hurt the way he did. And I know Gerard Mayo said he had negative x-rays. Look, I don't think Jaquay Jackson was going to make this team, but he was having a good summer. He was certainly positioning himself for a practice squad spot.
Definitely.
If not here, elsewhere, and maybe he gets on the back end of the 53 elsewhere. So hope he's okay. Hopefully it's nothing long term. But yeah, it sucked because he was having a decent summer.
Yep, definitely. Seemed like he'd be a great like practice squad.
Yeah,
receiver. He was running some smooth routes out there. He was building some momentum. So you hate to see that. You hope he's all right. But just very quick wrap up on the offense with the running backs. And kind of offensive line. Like I think the biggest concern with the offensive line last night is they weren't gaining much room on the ground. Like it was kind of a struggle to run the ball. Mondre, Gibson, Kevin Harris was still RB3. JaMychal Hasty showed some good bursts. I don't know if they're going to keep 4 and if that would be JaMychal Hasty, but he had that nice screen pass. But anything from the run game as a whole and those backs on the roster there.
Hasty did look good. I think he's a guy that still ends up on the practice squad and maybe comes up later, but he had a good game. He had a good game on special teams as well. He's the one that stood out to me. I mean, Gibson, Stevenson were fine. Didn't see as much Kevin Harris last night as we've seen in other games, which to me is a good sign for him that they're happy with where he's at. It'll be interesting to see if Hasty can make a roster push, though. He's definitely on the bubble there.
Yep, definitely. And our guy Terrell Jennings didn't even get a carry, unfortunately. So
he was in there. I think he got a target, right? They threw one to him.
He got a catch. He got a 12-yard catch, but he didn't get any rush attempts. I think
they were throwing the ball last night. I think they wanted to test the line. They wanted to test the quarterbacks. They came out throwing.
Definitely. Yeah, because Kevin Harris got 3 rushes and Hasty got 2. So, and then it was Maye with 4, Milton with 3, Mondre got 6, Gibson got 4. So after Mondre and Gibson went out, they really were throwing the ball around a lot. So, still looks like Kevin Harris in that RB3 role. He had the best run of the night too. I think it was like a 13, 14-yarder. I believe it was one of their better. I think it was outside zone, one of their better outside zone reps of the night as well there. So he still looks like RB3, but we'll see if maybe JaMychal Hasty can make a push there as well. So, any wrap up on the offense?
I think that pretty much covers it.
That covers it. All right. We'll take one last quick break here from our friends over at Factor Meals, and then we will wrap this up with a little defensive thoughts and special team thoughts as well from last night. I have to talk to you guys about a new sponsor, and training camp is upon us, and sometimes Barth and I, especially Barth doing 4 shows, we don't have much time to prep dinner as we run home from Gillette Stadium before we get on live here, which is why Factor's no prep, no mess meals is the way to go. And Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. No matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Factor has a chef-created menu featuring meals such as a Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto, and plenty of other flavors to explore, with 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week. So treat yourself to restaurant quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon, and head to factormeals.com/PatsBeat50 and use code PatsBeat50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That is PatsBeat50 at factormeals.com/PatsBeat50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active over at Factor Meals. All right, to the defense. First game post Matthew Judon trade, and pass rush was swarming yet again. And I know it's mostly against the Eagles backups, but it was a good day for the Patriots pass rush. Keon White and Joshua Uche led the way with 4 pressures each. I think they both had a sack as well. So those are the 2 guys that we were really talking about. Like, these guys have to step up post Judon. And then you saw, O'Shea Jimenez get in there, Dietrich Wise get involved, all getting sacks. So encouraging. Again, it's preseason, but encouraging kind of first game there post Judon, especially with Keon White and Joshua Uche.
Yeah, look, it's so hard to judge just because the Eagles, I mean, it was their backup, really their third string offensive line, but that's what you want to see from a good defense against a backup line. You want to see them dominate. Essentially what the Eagles starters did to the Patriots in joint practices. So you want to see them take over. They took over. They lived in the backfield. I still don't know why Josh Uche played so late. Mayo said today it wasn't because of the training camp fight. He has to make this team. I mean, he's their best pure pass rusher.
He was limited early in the summer.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're just trying to get him some reps, almost like Raekwon McMillan, who we'll talk about. Like, he played deep into the game, and probably not because he's on the bubble, but he hasn't played in 2 years. So maybe they just want to get him reps. Maybe that was something.
No, I think that's a good point. But I mean, you had to like what you saw. I don't think that's necessarily a perfect reflection of what they're going to be this year just because of the competition, but I don't think it's a bad thing either.
Yep. So yeah, those were the edge guys. D tackle. Anyone, Jeremiah Farms still kind of led the way. We saw a lot of Mike Purcell. You talked about Armon Watts playing, not getting into the game late. Danny Aquale looked good. Like, he had some bursts as a pass rusher. Tristan Hill, I think he got hurt. Doug Kyde said that after the game, so that'll be something to monitor. But anyone from those kind of interior guys, Devon Goshaw didn't play, but any of those interior guys kind of make a push in your eyes.
I mean, I thought Farms had another good game last night. I think the bigger story is Watts not playing until late in that game, and seems like somebody that's on the outside looking in. He was one of their first free agency signings, but they didn't give him a ton of money. Even without Barmore, I mean, it feels like they could maybe get by without him. They have good depth for that role. I left him off the roster, and I think you can leave him off the roster and still put together a competitive roster with Farms and Hill both emerging. They're kind of set at defensive tackle. They're in a good place there. And I know he plays some on the edge too, but you still have Dietrich Wise. O'Shea Jimenez has showed up. They just
Keon White can bump in.
Keon White. It's been a position where a lot of guys have exceeded expectations. And I think he's just gotten passed by too many players.
Yep. So we'll see how that Armon Watts saga kind of shakes out there, if he can make a push over these last week and a half here. But yeah, a lot of depth there on the defensive line. These guys aren't going to be Christian Barmore, but maybe you can try to replace him as best as possible by committee, and you're getting some encouraging signs there with guys like Jeremiah Farms, Tristan Hill, and those guys behind them. So behind them, we didn't see Juwan Bentley, but not much Tavai as expected, the starters, but Raekwon McMillan was awesome. Even he was along the edge a little bit, so maybe that's something they try to tinker with. And he was very physical along the edge as well.
Yeah.
And Joe Giles Harris was another guy who continues to make a play or two every day. It seems like he has one really good coverage rep against a tight end up the seam, but he just appears to flash every now and then.
He's been good, but I just still don't think it's flashes. It's not consistent enough. He's a guy I still think ends up on the practice squad.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a candidate for practice squad elevations.
Anything from Raekwon or those other linebackers?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I thought Raekwon was awesome. And
Yeah.
he was a force in the run game. He was attacking downhill. He delivered some big hits. He's been really good on special teams as well. He's going to make this team. He's going to play a role. And how big that role is, I don't know. I don't think they want to give him too big of a role because of his injury history, but a reminder, and I've been a big fan of his, going back to before they signed him, but he's like a legitimate NFL contributing rotational player. He's a good player to have. He can never stay healthy. And that's why he is kind of has the standing he does. But if he's healthy, yeah, he's on the team and he's playing and he's going to help you out. So a good reminder last night of what he can do when he's fully healthy.
And everyone praises him for his leadership off the
Yeah.
field, right? His locker, like he was around the team basically as a coach last year while he was hurt. Like the locker room really loves him. So if he's giving you that level of play as well, that's a nice. Uh, he's going to be on the team. He's going to be on the team. But
Right.
on your roster projection, did you have Christian Ellis on or off?
I
Because
didn't. He's still just off to me.
okay, because I
I
was
know.
thinking if they're using, McMillan and maybe Tavai gets more of along the edge, Christian Ellis has made kind of a push here as more of an like a depth off ball linebacker, but you still had him off there.
Yeah, I think they can get him on the practice squad and bring him back later. I
Fair.
also think that him and McMillan, I don't know. I thought him and McMillan, there's kind of overlap. Do you need
Yeah.
both those guys? I guess
Especially if Talkie is ready, a
right.
little
You
bit of
let
overlap.
you lay out a scenario where maybe they could both be on the field at the same time. I just thought there was a little too much overlap there. But
Yeah.
you're right. Like if Taki's still not ready, maybe he grabs one of the last roster spots.
Yep. So he's another guy to kind of watch there. Depth
Yeah.
bottom of that roster bubble. So secondary, kind of a rough one for Marcellus Dial, which he's a rookie. It's going to happen, but they were really picking on him. Who was that guy? Like Joseph Nada or something on Philly. It was just a couple deep completions on him, and then one to set up the go-ahead touchdown, and then Dial was in coverage on the go-ahead 2-point conversion. So kind of a rough one for Marcellus Dial, as those depth corners are still kind of fighting it out for roster spots at this point.
Yeah, and I still think Dial's on the team. You got to go by the whole body of work, not just last night, but yeah, he probably has to sweat it out now. Like he didn't do himself any favors. He's right there on the bubble, and he's going to need to come back with a strong week this week and not let that tumble. But yeah, he had a rough game last night. Meanwhile, you still see Alex Austin out there making plays. Marco Wilson continues to look good. Like those guys are on. To me, it's Dial and Wade for that last spot, even if there is a last spot. I think that's the 7th cornerback spot.
Yeah.
It's those two for maybe the last spot, but not a great one for. And he wasn't. He had some trouble in joint practices too, so it's been tough for Marcellus Dial.
Yeah, Alex Austin. I mean, we've talked a lot this summer how he's kind of come back, maybe a little bit in practice, but like I thought the first preseason game he was maybe their best corner, and then watching live last night, he seemed to make a few splash plays. So he's been trending in the better right direction in game action, which is good to see. But yeah, he's still, Marco Wilson's involved. Isaiah Bolden got the start in the slot with Sean Wade and Marcus Jones out. I thought he looked good. You saw his kind of closing speed on one of those sacks. Gerard Mayo did say Marcus Jones and Jonathan Jones are close to returning. So we'll see how that secondary kind of shakes out when those two are in there. But did you say you kept 7 on your roster projection?
Yeah, I had 7. I still had Dial on, but I had him on the bubble. I had him right on the fringe.
Okay. And then so Wade cut Bolden on in the slot?
Yes.
Okay. So 7 corners. A lot of corners, but it's a deep competitive room. So definitely a possibility there. And Josh asked here, any thoughts on Gonzalez?
Again, he gave up some catches last night. It's just going to come down to me, is he a gamer? Because he wasn't perfect in camp last year either. And then obviously had the start that he did. So I think we're splitting hairs at this point with him with these practice reps. Like it's clear he hasn't had a good camp. That's the reality. But you saw enough last year in games that you're not going to write him off. At this point, we just got to see it. We just got to see it in a regular season game. I don't want to say I'm not worried, but his camp hasn't been what we expected it to be. Fine. If he shows up in the games, it doesn't matter. If not, yeah, we saw it coming. I don't think anything's changing between now and the start of the season with him.
Yeah. I'm not going to worry about it until it happens in the regular season, if
Right.
it happens in the regular season. So we'll get back to you on that one. So not much in the safety room, although Josh Bledsoe came back. He was hurt, and they
Yeah.
used him as kind of like a blitzer. I think he blitzed twice, and he had 2 pressures. So
He did. I put
about,
him on the roster. He had a really
yeah,
good, well-rounded game
talks
last
about
night.
like manufacturing maybe some more pressure without Matthew Judon and Christian Barmore. Like maybe that's the guy. And you saw Joshua Bledsoe get a little bit more involved in that aspect. So you had him on your roster. Was he
Yeah.
the 5th safety counting Brendan Schooler?
Yeah, and I kept Del Pettis too. So
Kept Pettis. Okay.
yep.
So crowded safety room there, but
Yeah, crowded defense. Really, I went thin at tight end with just 3, thin at running back with just 3, 9 offensive linemen, and then just loaded up on defense
and 4 quarterbacks. So
and 4 quarterbacks. You're right.
interesting. All right. Nothing else defense. I think that's most of it.
Quote, let's do real quick on Del Pettis. Credit to him. I thought he was having a quiet game, and then he makes that great play. The Eagles ended up scoring, but makes that great play. He was giving up 5 inches and 50 pounds on whoever that tight end was and boxed him out at the 1. That's an awesome play. And just doesn't, just credit for that. That was a good play by him.
You've seen that physicality a lot since the pads came on.
Yeah.
So credit to him for that one. But let's go to special teams. Joey Sly looks like the guy right now. They're still rotating field goals, but Sly has been first up, and then it's worked out that he has gotten all the field goal attempts while Chad Ryland gets all the extra point attempts. So Sly got 2 field goals, 51 yards and 45 yards last night, made them both. Ryland got the 1 extra point and made that. But Joey Sly, I don't know if you have the summer updated tally in front of you, but that's probably still close. But when you break it down, I compared it to like the college resume the other day. Like Joey Sly's resume is a lot better. He's got 2 games now of perfect on field goals, including mostly from deep, and then even in practice he's making the hurry up, the live 2-minute situation drills. So I think right now it's pretty clear advantage for Joey Sly in that kicking battle.
So Sly has 1 less make on 1 more attempt. So I have Sly 28-35, Ryland 29-34. Brian, I don't know if you have the same numbers, but the difference to me, Sly's 5 for 5 from 50 plus. Ryland's 1 of 3. They're comparable in the 40 to 49 yard range. 10 of 12 for Sly, 10 of 11 for Ryland. He's been better, and he's going to give you more range. That's your guy. Not even like he's better right now. I know Mayo said this morning that it's still a competition. I guess it still technically is, but I just think what would need to happen in the amount of time that's left for Ryland to catch up to Joey Sly. I'm ready to declare a winner. I think Joey Sly's our week 1 kicker. I'm calling it. He's locked in right now. I don't think Ryland can catch him. I think Sly would also have to come back to him. And Sly's just in a rhythm right now. He's locked in. And I don't think he's going to have a nuclear meltdown or anything in these last practices. Does he stick through the season? Does he stay this hot through the season? I don't know. But I think he's won the job.
Yep. I do think it's a shame that looks like we might have another preseason where Chad Ryland doesn't get 1 field goal attempt in the preseason. And I get Joey Sly has earned the right to go first, and now they're strictly rotating, and it's just worked its way out like that. But it is kind of a shame that, a second straight year here, Ryland can't get even a field goal attempt in preseason action.
Well, here's what was telling for me, Brian. When they did their walkthrough before the game, and usually when they do their walkthrough before the game, they kick 1 field goal at the end. It's the last play of the walkthrough. And they did 1 field goal yesterday. And Joey Sly. It was Joey Sly. He's currently the starting kicker. And he through the practices, he earned the right to be the starting kicker going into the games, and he's done nothing to let go of that. He legitimately won the job. I know some people are annoyed they're not giving Chad Ryland more chances. My question would be, did he earn more chances? I don't think he did.
Yeah, we almost had the Christmas Eve repeat in Denver with the Bailey Zappi 2-minute drive and the Chad Ryland field goal.
It would have been interesting if that happened. Although if he missed it, then it would have been over.
It would have been over. But if he made it, now we're really talking here. But yeah, we have we have 6 practices and then the last preseason game. I don't know if something drastic could change. Maybe Ryland gets some attempts in that last game, but do you think if they keep Sly, do you think Ryland maybe falls in the practice squad candidate range if he would want to stick around here, first of all? But
I think it's possible. Certainly. I don't, if he wants to stick around, it's the big one, but you keep him and you kind of keep the competition going a little bit into the season. I flirted with the idea on the roster projection of keeping 2 kickers and saying, just keep this competition going
not
into the
this
year. Like they're going to have to do a tackle. No, we're not really doing 2 kicker. It made sense last year. It doesn't make sense this year, but keeping Chad Ryland on the practice squad, I don't think there's going to be a market for him around the league. So yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be worthwhile because these kickers can be so volatile, right? You just never know. Keep the pressure on. Keep the pressure on these guys, and keep a young guy around. So see what something happens there. So, but yeah, Sly is the guy right now. So, just elsewhere quickly on special teams. I mean, I mentioned it on the top. The Bryce Behringer punt was awesome.
Yeah.
Complete coffin corner. That was awesome. And then some good returns still. Jalen Reagor had a 15-yard punt return and then like a 30-yard kick return. And then David Wallace really broke one 52, 53-yard kick return. He's flashed. He did muff a punt, which has been kind of consistent throughout the summer. Like he's had some issues handling
and
them.
It's not just that he muffed it. He then, instead of falling on the ball, like tried to pick it up and run with it, but it took him like 3 or 4 tries to pick it up, and eventually he fell on it because the Eagles were closing in. Still a practice squad player to me. Yeah, that wasn't that was a pretty bad fire drill trying to handle that muffed punt.
Yeah, and he didn't do it in college, so it's somewhat new to him. So maybe he'll learn, right? Like we heard Pop Douglas last year say like he didn't know how to catch a punt until he worked with Troy Brown at like the Shrine Bowl. So maybe you get him on the practice squad because if he gets the ball in his hands, he's proved he can make something happen here. So maybe that's something you keep him on the practice squad for and see if you have something there as a returner down the line. So, but he's looked good and Jalen Reagor's looked good.
He does give me, I have a comp for you though. He gives
David
me
Wallace.
for David Wallace. There's some Riley McCarron vibes there, and I'm not falling for that one again.
Okay, that's fair. But, yeah, I'm not expecting like the next Marcus Jones back there, but I don't know. He's had some good returns here. So, and then Jalen Reagor, like 2 big returns as a kick returner and a punt returner. Like that's big for him because if he wants to make this team, like he's got to contribute in those areas as well. So, good to see him do that. But any other kickoff, kick return takeaways there? Anything catch your eye now that we're seeing a little bit more of this dynamic kickoff? Or
yeah, I mean mainly that Reagor return. I thought that was he made a little play there to turn a 25-yard return into a 35-yard return. I think that's what gets him on the team. I don't think we saw much from the Patriots kickoff unit. Not that I remember.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all pretty cut and dry there. So, yeah, I think that pretty much covers it for special teams.
Still pretty vanilla there. Hopefully we get more excitement when the regular season starts and teams start.
I think we will.
Yeah, hopefully. We did see some touchbacks too, which was different because it seems like they want to kind of return these and see how it looks, but we saw some touchbacks coming out to the 30 last night. So first time we really saw that. But all right, any last takeaways we didn't get to? Or again, we have 3 practices coming up now. Anything you're looking forward to? Obviously the quarterback reps, try to get some of these young guys in, but any other last thoughts here before we wrap this one up?
What did you make of how broken up Maye was after the game about the loss? I think I like that, but I don't know. It was to go from last week where he said these games don't matter. He said they're important, but they don't matter, to yeah, that stings. It's first loss as a head coach. And then he goes on and on about, we didn't do the fundamentals well enough in the second half. That's on me. Attention to detail. I thought it was interesting. And
it was
for the spot this team is in. I've gone back and forth on how I feel about that.
It was, when I first heard it, I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, right? It's a preseason. And
yeah,
I just don't like the whole, like, Drake Maye keeping his first touchdown ball. Like, I'm also a hater, but I'm like, it's the preseason. Like, let's keep the first one in the regular season. But
right.
I mean, I guess when it comes to Mayo, like I'd rather him care about this a little too much than be like, oh, whatever, like I don't care at all, right? Like, does that make sense? Like, I'd rather him care, I guess, and be a little upset that they lost the game. But yeah, I
Right.
thought hearing that, I was a little like, oh, that's kind of a weird thing to hear from right now. So, but good point. Yeah, that caught my attention in live time. So, all right, we can wrap it up
Yeah.
there then. We'll be back tomorrow. They have a 3 o'clock practice, so it might be a little later at night, depending on it's a shorter practice. I think it's 90 minutes, but it doesn't start till 3. So we might be
We'll
back.
see. Honestly, I know we do after every practice. If it's literally just a walkthrough,
Yeah,
we might just do Sunday and do both. Actually, I'm not going to be at practice on Sunday because I'm on the Sports Hub. So you may have to maybe Taylor and Mike on here on Sunday, but maybe
Okay.
you guys will do both.
All right,
So.
we'll figure something out, and we'll keep everyone updated. So, you can follow Patriots CLNS on Twitter. That's probably the best spot for your live updates, show updates, and then make sure you're subscribed to Patriots Press Pass and turn on your notifications so you do know when we go live as well. And in the meantime, you can follow Alex on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Head over to 985thesportshub.com. He has plenty of breakdowns from last night's preseason game, a fresh roster projection up there as well. You can check out. And you can follow me on Twitter at I am Brian Hines, and head over to patspulpit.com for our preseason Patriots coverage over there as well. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in with us today. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you guys sometime soon.
Bye.